Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about something really boring that not a lot of people care about or even know about, I guess. But that's all right because this new JFK file document dump has been just making the internet go crazy. So, this is a list of House Select Committee staffers and the CIA's payroll to them, apparently. Very interesting, very interesting that the ABC News is already like going insane about that the social security numbers of these former staffers weren't redacted from the documents, and so apparently in the rush to release all the documents from JFK, they didn't. They weren't able to go. I mean, there's just tens of thousands of these documents that have all been are all classified and still classified, and they're dumped on us. We've got a number of Vanity Fair, for example, um, doing the pieces on the JFK. Right. So Vanity Fair, what's in the new uh, JFK files reveal about CIA secrets, and you look up James Robinault, and this guy is deep state. He is 100% CIA payroll of the deep state. So the fact that Luna's sharing this on X is just not very good for her end of the research onto who is the deep state, what is the JFK cover up, and how deep and far does it go. The first I watched this recently with Geraldo Rivera completely reversing his position. It's clear that he doesn't want to be killed by the friggin' CIA and FBI. It's clear that he knows there's a deep state that murders presidents, murders journalists, murders witnesses, murders all sorts of people, murders scientists to cover up the truth about scientific discoveries, and suppresses information from the greater public, and will kill and ruin careers in order to do that. And they will make careers for people who go along with the official story. So Geraldo Rivera realizes that he wants to continue to have a career and a life and everything else. He absolutely needs to, you know, distance himself from guys like Robert Groden and Dick Gregory, who were on his show back in 1975 when they went after the Zapruder film and revealed it to the public for the first time. And now here he is just going along with official bullshit narratives and explanations. Can't even remember the name of the science, the scientist moved, but he's like, oh, there was this thing about the Zapruder film and the head going back and to the left in the motorcade car. And you know what? I There's forensic pathologists and all sorts of other experts that I've interviewed and talked to in the years since, and I really think that it's plausible and explainable that Oswald was the only shooter, and that he did act alone, and that it was just this muscle spasm, and he couldn't remember the name of it though, which is just embarrassing for someone who claims to be a journalist and after the truth, but props on Ross for actually doing some decent digging on the JFK assassination. He didn't just end his JFK stuff with this complete flop of an interview. He also interviewed this fellow. Well, he interviewed Danny Sheen, who's pretty well knowledgeable on the whole stuff, but he's still of the Daniel Ellsberg. He's still connected with this whole. I'm still unsure about Danny Sheen. I've been trying to get Danny Sheen on, trying to talk to him, trying to, figure out figure him out. Very interesting guy, because the whole Bob Woodward thing and what's come out about that is really remarkable. That they basically they used the Pentagon Papers to get their guys to go into the National Archives so that they could destroy and delete files on the JFK assassination and stuff. Was basically the Pentagon Papers was a bait and an infiltration, really. Once you look at everything that they did with Watergate and to get Nixon out, and of course Nixon gets out and then Ford gets put in. Ford pardons Nixon, and Ford was on the Warren Commission. He's one of the Warren commissioners. which this whole, JFK dump of all these social security numbers and the names of all the House Select Committee staff members and Warren Commission staff members. And these are all the people on CIA payroll who are, basically working for the deep state on the whole cover up of the JFK assassination back in the day. And here we are. We got their names and their social security numbers. And who do I find on the list? I was looking, do I know any of these names or any of this stuff interesting? Right on the bottom of the first page, it says John Farmer Jr. John J. Farmer Jr., a clerk. So, he's born in 57. So in 77, he was like 19, 20 years old. He did such a good job that summer, according to the documents on him. So you can read through the whole document here. It's down in the description. There's a link to this where you can find it on the National Archives website to the larger document. There's a sub document on the master page with links to all these. So all these have individual files. There's individual files on all these people that you can go and look up. And the one, she says the ones with the higher salaries are the ones you should really look at. But he's got the low. I was like, all right, well, what about the ones with the lowest salaries? What are they doing on the list? And find out that John Farmer Jr.'s on CIA payroll as early as 1977 is just remarkable. A remarkable revelation, because John Farmer Jr., if you don't know, was the head counsel to the 9/11 Commission. He was like the main guy for the 9/11 Commission, under Keene and Hamilton, who were the official 9/11 commissioners and stuff. But it just goes to show you how the deep state inserts their operatives inside the investigations into their own crimes, so that they end up destroying evidence and information, and they never find anything, and no one ever gets arrested or held accountable from the deep state who are involved in these mass murders and stuff. So but yeah, anyways, sorry to get detoured on some of that stuff, but the whole with Ross Coulthart, he did an interview, which again, this is the stuff that's coming up, but you have to dig back here to find the good interview on here 4 days ago. This one, this guy that he had on is a former intelligence officer. This guy, Jeff Cruikshank. He's an Australian, this dude right here. And he definitely knows his shit. He's definitely like on top of this stuff and is good with it, man. It was just a fantastic episode, and I encourage Ross really redeemed himself from the showing what a media plant looks like who wants to keep his job. That was great. It was a great expose. I mean, it just plain as day that Geraldo is full of shit in that interview. And thank you for putting this out, because this just is really deep and goes into a lot of shit. I had no idea about David Christ. I had looked up and found the name Dan Carswell before, and I would know, like, oh, what is Dan Carswell? The CIA agent Dan Carswell. And people were saying that he was involved in the Kennedy assassination, and there's no way. He came back in like October or September of 1963 from a Cuban prison and stuff. Yeah. I was, again, I'd really love to interview Danny Sheen and get into all this stuff, because all this stuff is related to the UFOs, to JFK, to 9/11, because the people that, off JFK did so for the UFO file. He was going to meet with Lloyd Berkner, who was one of the MJ-12 members, to really get the UFO file out of these people's hands. He was going to abolish the CIA. He had all these plans in order, but I mean, JFK was going to take down the deep state, and the deep state took him out instead. So that's the crux of this, and when you connect the people involved with the Bushes and the CIA, with the Operation Zapata and all 9/11, and 9/11 is connects to UFO disclosure as well. It's very, very much connected, because the people that in charge of UFO disclosure and the real reverse engineering programs and all the top secret deep state stuff at Area 51. That was EG&G, don't forget. And EG&G all got bought out by the Carlyle Group right before 9/11. Okay. And so it absolutely fucking connects because, again, the nanothermite that was planted in the World Trade Centers on 9/11 was manufactured by, the experts for that were SAIC and Battelle. And when you go down those rabbit holes, those are the companies in charge of all the UFO file stuff and all the UFO, all the most top secret, all the most top secret stuff are connected very much to these deep state operations. These are the people who hold the top secrets in this country, which is UFO disclosure. And I played that clip for you guys on the last episode with Dark Journalist, where he interviews Watergate burglar lawyer. So E. Howard Hunt's lawyer. Who's the guy's name? You guys, who was watching last episode and paid attention? First person to get it. I'm gonna give him a free membership to the channel. First person that can tell me what the guy's name was, who's Watergate, Dark Journalist, Watergate lawyer. What was his name? It's on Dark Journalist, and it's going to be under Hunt lawyer. Anyways, well, people are working on that. It wasn't Henry Kissinger. It was the guy interviewed. It's like a 10-year-old video, and Dark Journalist interviewed Howard Hunt's lawyer, and Howard Hunt told him that we killed Kennedy because he was going to reveal the JFK. He was going to reveal the UFO file, the alien stuff. Deep Throat's lawyer. Well, it wasn't. No, I don't think it was Deep Throat's lawyer, because again, they said that Deep Throat was Mark Felt, but Deep Throat was actually the arresting officer in the case. And Watergate, it might be Watergate. He was the Watergate lawyer. Oh my God, what is the name? All right. Again, you guys have to find out the Watergate lawyer that Dark Journalist interviewed 10 years ago. We covered it on the last episode very clearly. So Douglas Caddy is his name. Okay. I found it before you guys. Haha. Got to pay attention to this stuff. These names are super important, and writing these names down and looking these names up are super important, because Douglas Caddy's important. David L. Christ is important. David L. Christ, I mean, I read through the documents last night on David L. Christ and all the CIA stuff. Our Men in Havana, the three, was basically these three guys got arrested. They said that they were just hired. They were sent by, this guy out of the Cuban embassy to bug this office, and they were bugging like some Chinese news agency that was in Cuba. And they were a communist, news agency, and these guys were setting up, drilling into the wall in the bathroom, and like trying to like hide microphones and stuff inside the wall, and they all got arrested and caught. And they were sent to this CIA. This Castro's sent them to this prison on the Isle of Pines. I don't know. Castro must have been so busy dealing with other stuff, he didn't really take note, or I don't know why he didn't dig into these guys deeper. But basically they kept their covers names intact. They never found out that these guys' real names. David L. Christ used the name Dan Carswell. He told him that his name was Dan Carswell, and got away with it. They never, and they all wrote down in the thing, they said that the guy running the CIA interrogation, they didn't know his name, but he had really bad teeth, like cavities all in his front teeth. And he was reading like the interrogations manual in reverse, and he'd just pick a page out of it and start there with the interrogation. And they said that if he had actually read the manual and followed it, from the first page start to finish in order and done it correctly, that they all would have been dead meat and they all would have had their CIA cover blown. And you read the internal CIA memos on David L. Christ, and they were like livid that these guys were going to have their cover blown while they were sitting in the CIA prison on the Isle of Pines, right? So the Isle of Pines prison, where this is the Presidio Modelo is where they were, and they write about it in their memoirs and their report back to their debriefing when they go back to CIA. They talk about everything they experienced and everything they went through. They said that it was like people were just shitting open. There's like a couple toilets and stuff, and that you'd have to bring water up from the salt water up from the bottom up in buckets in order to flush the toilets. And it was like they said they could feed you like shitty rice and beans for lunch, and that was like, and like the worst breakfast, the worst like dinner, and it was just like a hell camp. This friggin' CIA, Cuban filth prison, the Central Guard Tower in the middle, where the guards would basically stay and keep watch, where they'd have an open view of everything, all the cells and all the numbers and everything. But this prison was built in the 1920s as like this panopticon super prison, and it's now shut down. It's now a museum. You can actually go there on vacation and visit now. But there was this whole CIA plan to bust them out, and I guess that the Cubans had planted a whole bunch of explosives all around the building. That in the event that the CIA or anyone, they could blow the whole prison up and kill everyone inside. Basically, they had these things rigged, so anytime they needed to, they could blow up the prison and destroy it from the inside. And that was in like the CIA documents, and they kept these guys there under their code names, and but they didn't know that David L. Christ, the guy that was Dan Carswell sitting in the CIA prison, was basically the head operations officer for all the CIA's like bugging stuff. He was the head R&D guy who designed all the new equipment, like the new semiconductor electronics, the new microphones, the new to make things smaller, more compact. And he was like one of the head guys in charge of all that stuff. He was running, like, he had operational knowledge, they said, of all where all the bugs were and all the different like CIA operations. This whole CIA operation was called ZR Chest. You can go look up the breadth of it if you want to, a deep dive tonight on your own. I can't really get into all of it here tonight because it's just so dense. But if you dig into this, you'll find that the whole ZR chest thing with these guys. David Christ was the guy for the CIA who'd set up all these bugs and he was like basically led all the teams, and they shouldn't have had him sent to such a high security area with Cuba at that time, during the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And this event, when the CIA caught these guys putting bugs in, and they basically, their cover story was to blame it on the head of a guy at the embassy, who they named as, like, I think it was Richard G. What was the name of the it's all in the documents. I'll share them with you in the link below after the thing. But the CIA agent was kicked out of. I'm surprised they didn't arrest him and charge him as a co-conspirator, but he was basically kicked out of Cuba, and that's when Cuba just ended diplomatic relations with the United States. And they put these guys in prison, and then released them with a whole big prisoner release. Like, basically, the U.S. tried to negotiate for some prisoner releases, and they didn't want to give too much information about that. You may have some of our guys, and they said, like, during the like release, these guys were immediately, they moved everyone into a building, and these three were like quickly moved out the back door of the building and loaded onto a separate plane. And they had like a whole operation there to receive them, and man, this was a pretty intense read, a deep dive down the rabbit hole when you realize, if they had just interrogated these guys a little bit deeper, they would have gotten they would have gotten like some of the most crucial secrets out of the United States. They could have just tortured this guy and tortured him to, they didn't. They sent him to a real bad place, and he had a shitty time. Talks about it, how they had to survive and how bad it was. Some of their experiences in the jail there. It was a pretty, unsettling read, to be honest with you. But the whole thing is this is good stuff, and I think Ross Coulthart really redeemed himself from really exposed Geraldo and really gave us some good inside information, at least what the Australians know, because these Australian intelligence guys like this dude digging into this stuff and learning all about what the CIA was doing in Cuba and all the Cuba stuff that was going on during the height of this. These guys were released as prisoners in like 1963. They were arrested in 1960, and they spent like 3 years in Cuban prisons until the CIA got them out on some backdoor like deal for like we had to release a bunch of Cubans that we had caught trying to bomb buildings in New York City in order to get these people released. Like we had to like negotiate a trade, basically. But yeah, the Cubans, Fidel had no idea what he had. If he had, these guys were sitting, the key to like massive payback on the CIA that Fidel would have wanted to have so desperately, and during that time was just 3 guys sitting in a prison that he had no idea their true identities. They were under a cover story and cover names. And one of the names was Dan Carswell, and that name came up as like one of the 3 tramps from Dealey Plaza and whatnot. Weird stuff. But the fact that John Farmer gets hired onto the House Select Committee assassinations in '77 as a 19, 20-year-old staffer, and then later becomes this deep state CIA plant in the 9/11 Commission investigation years later, should be a huge red flag for any serious deep state researcher. And then the connections also go into there's so much we're learning from these documents. There's a bunch of crap though. Grok spit out this answer, and I've seen this been going around on Twitter a lot, which I don't know what the heck is going on with Twitter. I've been I've had my account banned, and I created a new one, and I don't even want to pay for this stuff because all the UFO stuff is shadow banned and censored, except for the controlled narrative crap, which they promote the hell out of, and it's like, I don't know if it's engagement farming or what, but I just don't trust Twitter because they've censored a lot of people. They've censored me. They've censored Ashton. They've censored a whole number of us on Twitter. So, and then Grok is spitting out this bullshit, which makes me not trust them even more. Number 1, James Angleton's deputy, Ann Goodpasture, played a pivotal role in orchestrating Oswald's Mexico City narrative. Okay. So this is important, is how they constructed this Mexico City narrative and the people that were behind that. So Angleton, it turns out, with his Angleworks, basically, Angleton was one of the top people at the CIA during this time, the height of the Cold War, and he was in charge of I think he was in charge of the Israel desk, and he was also in charge of the Russian desk. So he was basically all Eastern like affairs in that area, East Asia and whatnot, everything there. So it's interesting is that James Angleton is basically was given free reign. He ran a CIA within the CIA, as some people said, and a lot of counterintelligence activities, and they basically created this cover story for Oswald to frame him as the Soviet which is really interesting because Geraldo says, "Oh, if I were to focus on anything in the JFK thing, it would be Oswald's time in Russia and what really happened with Oswald in Russia." And digging into all that, we find a lot of interesting stuff in the Russian file. The big thing, the defectors study, is we find that there were a number of defectors. Lee Harvey Oswald, turns out, was on a list of 11 people or 13 people that were recruited from the military service, or else, I think they're all military guys with similar backgrounds, and they defected to other countries. Needham, Mass. That's interesting. A lot of these guys are, local to me, but they defected to other countries. Like Oswald was picked as the guy that would defect to Russia, and they would try to infiltrate Russian intelligence, pretend and bring over a little bit of secrets, some information with them, just to, enough to whet the appetite for more connections and more information, and then they could insert these people into the idea was that Oswald would be picked to go to Russia and be inserted into Russian intelligence and all this stuff, and that was part of the plan. And there comes out in the documents that, yeah, here's the names of all the other Oswalds that were sent to all these other countries as part of the program. And they would give these, instead of, they weren't formally trained and sent to like CIA, the farm or anything, to learn real information and stuff about. They didn't want a background where they could basically be like linked to CIA. So they linked these guys, they sheep dip them, which is the idea of sheep dipping is like, oh, you can color the sheep, and then everyone's like, oh, well, that's a black sheep because it looks like a black sheep, because you just dyed it, even though it was a white sheep before. The idea is to like change your colors so that you look to the enemy to be something you're not. So again, they had Oswald, talking and reading Soviet literature, and then tries to go to the USSR and denounces, the USSR wants him to kick him out after his visa expires. So yeah, your vacation's up, and you have to leave the USSR now. And he slits his wrist and goes to a mental hospital over in Russia, and then tries to denounce his citizenship from the mental hospital. And I don't think that was part of the CIA plan or operation, because they basically, in the CIA documents, they say that Oswald is like unstable, and he's just like, they try to use him as an intelligence asset, but they have questions about his stability. And they especially had questions about his stability after he came back to the United States after, leaving Russia, after, not being a stable asset over there. He gets kicked out or whatever, leaves, comes back with the Russian wife. And then he's in New Orleans and gets arrested for fighting. And I don't know if that was intentional. Some people think that was set up on purpose, to sheep dip him as this, because he gets in a fight with, while handing out flyers for the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. And the Fair Play for Cuba Committee, the original flyers had that, 554 Camp Street logo on them, right? The Fair Play for Cuba Committee. And it was a committee of one person, the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. The only person on the Fair Play for Cuba Committee was Lee Harvey Oswald. And he had printed up these flyers, and when he printed the first 100 or so, Guy Bannister saw them and absolutely lost his mind. With Sorry about that. I have to. She can't. Sorry about that. I had to. My wife just got out of the hospital. We had a baby, so she can't do stuff for herself. So I had to help her with something. But I'm back. I'm sorry for that. Fair Play for Cuba Committee, 554 Camp Street. Guy Bannister, the FBI agent at 554 Camp Street, flips out. He has Oswald take that off and print a bunch more. But somehow they end up with the one with the location on it. They took the location off, but that location is key because it turns out that the Fair Play for Cuba Committee is just a guy named Lee Harvey Oswald. It's a made up organization, and then Oswald's handing out these flyers to try to piss off all these, pro-Cuban people. Anti-Cuban people, because there's all these anti-Cuban people in New Orleans, and against Fidel Castro. So, basically Oswald comes out there and he's like, I'm pro Castro. Yeah, we need, like I'm a communist. They try to plant him as a communist and connected to Cuba in New Orleans. And this is all an FBI operation that's being run by Guy Bannister's office. And it turns out Guy Bannister is literally the guy that's connected to the X-Files. Guy Bannister created the file designation X. He was so sensitive about his files that when he found, this was Jack Martin, who worked for Guy Bannister, and in an incident shortly after the assassination, he beats the crap out of Jack Martin, sends Jack Martin to the hospital because he thought that Jack Martin was looking through some of his files. And or in the movie, they say, oh, I've seen a lot of stuff here. I should write a book. And then he beats him for that. But it's similar idea. That when Jack Martin knew a ton of stuff because he worked for Guy Bannister and saw a lot of, they were running guns to Cuba through this office on 544 Camp Street in New Orleans. They were, there was all kinds of stuff that they were doing out of this office and also investigating X-Files and UFO cases. When the guys that would show up, the guys that show up to the Maury Island incident, Maury Island UFO incident, right, was Guy Bannister and this other fellow named Fred Chrisman. And Guy Bannister shows up and he says, I'm with the FBI, and who the hell are you? And Fred Chrisman's like, oh, well, we're with an agency that's higher than the FBI. That's super secret. And this was, I believe, the induction or the marriage between some of these forces with Guy Bannister and the UFO file people. And the UFO file and deep aerospace people are all super connected to the JFK assassination, because we find out that the Texas School Book Depository building was owned by a guy named D. Harold Byrd. D. Harold Byrd used to be a trophy hunter. He had a whole room full of all the heads of the taxidermied heads of all the animals that he killed, including elephants that he'd shot in Africa. And one of the things he had in his trophy room was the window from the sniper's nest of the Texas School Book Depository building. Why he would keep that in his trophy room with all his dead elephants that he shot is anyone's guess. But after he died, they auctioned off all that stuff, and here it is at an auction when it hit eBay, right? That was 2007. Starting price was $100,000. So again, D. Harold Byrd was the CEO. He just invested a ton of money with his buddy James Ling in a company called Ling Temco Voight LTV. Ling Temco Vought. And Vought Aerospace is the portion that D. Harold Byrd owned and was responsible for. And it turns out that Vought built all the flying saucers for Wright-Patterson in the 1940s and 50s, like all the early, UFO space program stuff for the Air Force. And he literally is the nephew of Admiral Byrd, the D. Harold Bird mountain range in Antarctica is named after his nephew here, D. Harold Bird. So yes, absolutely, it is not a joke. This definitely brings the JFK file related to the Antarctica file and to the X files through D. Harold Bird and Guy Bannister, two key people in the JFK assassination that, again, aren't appearing in these files. A lot of the stuff in this files is in Good Pasture and the whole James Angleton stuff. And of course, there's a lot of mentions of Israeli intelligence in the James Angleton files that were declassified. And so there's a ton of people, trying to be like, well, this is a Israel angle and that Israel was responsible for the assassination. And those people don't dig into the real players, and they focus only on Israel stuff, and it almost looks like a disinformation operation or some kind of CIA operation to pin this on another foreign intelligence agency rather than people keep talking about and mulling over all the CIA ties to this, which all these people need to be. I don't know. A lot of the people in the JFK stuff are dead, except for the people like John Farmer, who were, 20 years old on the House Select Committee on Assassinations, who John Farmer then gets recycled into the next deep state operation as an, head chief counsel to the 9/11 Commission, where he participates in the government cover-up of 9/11 years later. So it's very much connected. It's very much real. It's not a joke at all. And the whole Antarctica stuff is really important, because the Antarctica file thing links it to the CIA, right? So Admiral Byrd, Richard E. Byrd, a lot of the UFO stuff gets classified under file designations. A lot of the Antarctica stuff apparently gets classified under the same sort of umbrella of this super top secret, above, outside of government oversight, essentially. Weird stuff that comes up. But again, the staff payroll records, and this is a remarkable stuff. Again, here's the master list. People can go find this if they go to the JFK assassination records from the 2022 release, and I think it's on page 260 of the. Is a lot of the it's 259 to 262, I think. Like this general range. There's a whole bunch of them in there. These are all the sub documents from this, and that's the staff payroll thing. And yeah, they did not redact the social security numbers. And so a lot of the news agencies went ballistic on that. Like, oh, it's irresponsible and we need to, take these, and you can't undo that. Once the documents are published, man, like we've already saved them. There's no undoing that. So everyone's got John Farmer's social security number now, and you have no one to thank but yourselves. And, we're going to use that over the next couple months to dig into all of you people, because all of you, I very much hope, will be arrested under Kash Patel and Dan Bongino in the next 3 years. Within the next 3 years, my goal, my number one primary focus will be to make sure that these people are exposed and that they will be arrested. Okay, so this is the they were gonna dig a hill. This is cool. This is all the CIA escape plans that they were planning, ideas for how to escape from the pavilion, how to get them out, They had all these people investigate and look at it. This was like a big CIA operation for like the 3 years that their men were in Cuba. There was a ton of people working around the clock to get them out. And David Christ's wife apparently called every hour to get updates from them. She was just like so nervous and a mess for 3 years. But eventually got her husband back in one piece. To Castro's chagrin, I'm sure, once he learned. Like, shit. Oh my God. You mean I had it right under my finger? All right. So the cool thing about the JFK assassination, we realize is that, you know, Forbes family is a big part of this. Forbes family owns, they've been involved with a lot of the trade in China, the opium market, and the whole opium history of opium. One of their partner of Russell and Company, and later associate with Yale University. Again, the Skull and Bones Society and drug dealing through the Russell and Company. And John Forbes Kerry, of course, ran against Bush in the 2004 election. They were both members of the same secret society, which has an oath which supersedes all oaths. Basically, any oath that they serve in office is a null and void, and the only oath they truly serve is the Skull and Bones oath, which is secret. No one can really know what it is or what it's about, but a lot of people sell their soul to the devil to get part of this deep state operation. There's a lot of money and wealth and fortune and success that you know, your potentials can be realized. They will help you realize your potentials. Everyone has massive potentials, but we're all held back by massive forces in this world that, you know, force us to go to work every day and instead of, you know, doing what we'd really love to do or want to do. But Nashawn Island is right here. Martha's Vineyards right here in the in line with the Elizabeth Islands. This is Woods Hole in Falmouth down here in Massachusetts. And Nashawn Island is where the Forbes family owns the entire island. But apparently, CIA Director Alan Dulles went on vacation there out on the island in the summer of 1963. And as did a number of other very interesting people in the JFK assassination literature who were still waiting on the files to come out and the stuff. So Grok is telling us, oh, these three are the important names we need to look at. Ann Goodpaster and the James Angleton stuff. Salvatore Sam Russo, a mid-level mob enforcer, emerged as a key liaison between the CIA and the mafia. So they want you to focus on this guy, new guy, Sal Russo or Sam Russo, which again, Sam might be Sam Giancano, and Sal, his real name was Sal Giancana. And so it might be an alias for Sam Giancana, and who we know that the intermediary there was Judith, not Judith Van Baker, Judith Very Baker, who was just on Danny Jones' podcast the other day, and is the reason I found this link to John Farmer and all that. Thank her for that. But Judy Exner, is her name Judy Exner? Yeah, Judith Exner. And Judith Exner is the key liaison between the mafia. That, again, not sure why there's not more documents and stuff, but that's going to be the stuff that they're going to hold back. That's going to be the real crown jewels and real secret stuff. So I'm really hoping and waiting on to see that. And I think they're trying to burn a lot of people out on the JFK document dumps with all this other stuff, and then releasing social security numbers, and, you know, so that way they have some backlash or reasons to, you know, slow down the process or whatnot. Not sure how much of this is being rolled out, as it just seems like an intentional kind of slow rollout for whatever reason. Victor Petrov, and then this Victor Petrov person, the Soviet defector turned CIA asset, may have manipulated Oswald's Soviet connections. Yeah. So they're trying to make this story up of that Oswald went to Mexico City in, October of 1963, just before the assassination, and that he met with this guy Viktor Petrov, who was the Soviet um, assassinations wet works expert, who they're trying to, they tried to make it look like they made this fake guy, and he went to the Soviet embassy and tried to meet with this Viktor Petrov guy, and then they tried, saying that that was Oswald, but they have pictures of the guy from the embassy, and it does not look like Oswald, and then there's memos all over from that have been declassified about so Oswald. So this blah, 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 blah. They have pictures of the guy that actually visited the Soviet embassy. They have a couple different photos of him. And it's clearly not Oswald. It's clearly some other guy. But they tried to create this story that Oswald was, a spy for the Soviet Union, and that the original plan that Anslinger was working on with the Joint Chiefs of Staff is that these guys, they were going to demand a full-scale invasion of Cuba. They were going to demand and war with the Soviet Union. They wanted a full-scale, all-out war with the Soviet Union, and their plan was to they were setting up Oswald, the patsy, as this Soviet spy, that, that he was, and one of the conspiracies that goes around still is that Oswald was working for the Russians to assassinate the president. And that whole narrative, was being created by Anslinger and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Their original plan was to, throw this all on Russia, and then, but basically, instead of when the shit went down, they actually used that as the leverage to, so that Russian intelligence wouldn't go after and expose this. They're like, they said, we're gonna cover this all up. We're gonna help cover this up, even though they created it. I don't know what the Russians thought of that. Of course, this guy a massive bald spot on his head, or is this I don't get it. The Mexico City Lee Harvey Oswald, and no one's been able to identify who the fuck this person was. Still, the FBI's had this open case since Hoover, since the days of J. Edgar Hoover, man. And yeah, no one's been able to solve that one. That would be a remarkable feat if someone could, figure out who the Mexico City Lee Harvey Oswald actually was. So that's one of the things that people are looking for in the real documents. But it seems like a lot of this stuff's coming out, and Grok and other people are interpreting it as, that this was the classified stuff that they kept from the public. This is like first layer crap, man. This is all the counterintelligence and lies that they created about Lee Harvey Oswald in the sheep dipping process in the months before the assassination. All the stuff all the lengths that the CIA went through behind the scenes to make Oswald look like, to build a psychological profile for the Oswald assassin character. Basically, what all this amounts to and shows. The fact that they covered it up is proof that, that they were literally working on this, and they covered this up because this was their operation to frame Oswald as this, and now it's, coming out and being interpreted as, that this was the real stuff, and no, all this was the fake crap that the CIA created themselves. And that's what's going to be in these documents. That's what's going to come out in these documents. There's not going to be a smoking gun document that talks about, the shooters and the plan, all that kind of wet works and real deep state stuff. That's all black operations. That's never written down in documents or documented or kept, that's very closely guarded private secrets that are run by a select operation. And they don't, basically it never happened. And they have a cover story, an official story for how things happened, that they build and put together. and they did it for the Oswald thing and the deep state event of JFK, and they were able to try to keep that cover story intact, and it's remained intact in a lot of people's minds for a number of years. It's only recently that the cover story that they have is falling apart. It's the same thing with we don't realize, we're like Castro. We don't realize that we have David L. Christ in our prison. We just think that he's Dan Carswell. We're still, not operating under the whole understanding of that we have this information, man. That's great. Anyways, I want to play this clip. This is a clip from Mark Lane. So Mark Lane was an absolute beast. I had no idea that this is what early JFK assassination debates were like. And Mark Lane was one of the first guys on this, and he really knew his stuff, man. I want you guys to listen to this debate. This is the key part from it. This was my favorite part. There's a couple other really good parts in this, but this one was my particular favorite.
I think that the absolute proof is the fact that 399, which is essential to the commission's case, notwithstanding the commission's evidence and statement, the commission concluded that it is not essential to our case to show which bullet hit Governor Connolly. But I think even Mr. Liebler would concede that it is essential, that unless that bullet did the damage to both the president and the governor, and to the governor, the whole government's case falls apart. The fact is that each of the doctors who was called upon to testify, including the pathologist who Mr. Liebler has made reference to, Dr. Shaw, who treated Governor Connolly, each of them said when examining the bullet, I do not believe that that bullet could have done the damage to Governor Connolly. 399 could not have done the damage, said Dr. Shaw and others. And furthermore, Dr. Shaw on November 22nd, 1963, held a press conference at 4:30 in the afternoon, about 2.5 hours after Commission Exhibit 399 was recovered. And what did Dr. Shaw say at the press conference? The bullet which hit Governor Connolly remains in his thigh at the present time. It is there in his thigh. And that was 2.5 hours after Darrell Tomlinson found what the commission calls Commission Exhibit 399 and wants us to believe that came from Governor Connolly's thigh. What happened to that videotape? Seized by the commission and never published. But Metro Media in New York City has it and has played it. And that's Dr. Shaw on there at 4:30 in the afternoon.
So the clip of that press conference with Dr. Shaw from 4:30 in the afternoon of the day of the assassination has been covered up all these years, but the Warren Commission has it. So that is one of the files that needs to come out and be declassified. That is a key piece of evidence. They suppressed all of what the doctors at Parkland Hospital saw because the doctors saw as an entrance wound in the throat. Kennedy shot him the first time they shot him in the throat. Second shot hits him in the cranium and blows his brains out. So yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in, and thank you for becoming a member. I hope it was worth it, man. I try hard to put out a lot of good information on these streams. So yeah, to connect this, man, boom, that was key for me in a lot of ways. The Mark Lane interviews from, he just destroys these Warren Commission proponents, the people that are supporting the Warren Commission. He just takes into town Libeler and other guys. Some of these other debates. Yeah, look up Mark Lane. Just an absolute legend. And if you guys are into the JFK assassination stuff, also check out America's Untold Stories with Mark Grobert and Eric Hunley. These guys do really, really good research. Mark Grobert has been doing this for, Mark Grobert is like me on 9/11. 9/11, I was, 19, 20 years old when it happened, and it had a profound effect on my life. Began investigating it nonstop. And I don't know if that's exactly Mark's story, but I know that's who's the other guy? Robert Groden, similar name. Robert Groden, his story is he was the same age as me on when JFK happened, and he's been investigating, JFK ever since then. And so he's an excellent presentation here if people want to, dig into some of the older OGs of JFK assassination research. Definitely check out Robert Groden's work and Mark Grobert's work, American Untold Stories. There's a lot of knowledge and information there. I've gone back and listened to many of these podcasts twice just to re-look up the names. I came across this name came up on today's. I was listening to the whole history of Clay Shaw and Jim Garrison's investigation into which was basically covered in the film JFK. Was all about Jim Garrison, who was a district attorney, New Orleans attorney for in New Orleans district attorney. And he learned about Oswald had lived and worked in New Orleans and was operating around New Orleans, and began, digging into Oswald's time in New Orleans, and realized that many of these people that Oswald connected and associated with were still living and operating in New Orleans. And his investigation into these people determined, and they fell under his jurisdiction. So he brought a trial, and it was the first trial of its kind. The CIA got a hold of his witness list. Of course, he had to hand all that information over as a prosecutor to the defense. So the CIA literally went and killed everyone on his witness list before they could come in and testify. David Ferry got wiped out, died. All this was happening in the 70s, around the time of the House Select Committee on Assassinations and everything. Really remarkable story when you really dive into it and learn. And the way that they portray, Jim Garrison was a fail, the case was over, the jury reached a conclusion, and they failed to convict Clay Shaw within 10 minutes. And yeah, because they literally killed all the witnesses and silenced everybody. And they, this guy was very, very definitely involved in the JFK assassination. He knew Oswald, he knew Ferry. They were driving around doing interesting activities together in New Orleans and in Clinton, Clinton, Louisiana, in the months before the assassination, the lead up to the assassination, which proves that, and then they didn't. Clay Shaw denies he perjures himself 13 times on the stand during that trial. Garrison files another case against him for perjury charges, and then the feds step in and get it all dropped and released. And then they set up Garrison and take Garrison down. And so the deep state completely, this is what happens when you try to expose the deep state on a level that actually is meaningful and would lead to arrests and convictions of the guilty and the people involved. And it turns out that after Clay Shaw dies, his files and everything get declassified and released. And then it turns out that he was a fucking CIA agent the entire time, that they lied about it. They covered it up. He did know Lee Harvey Oswald. He did work on intelligence operations with, Guy Bannister and all these other shady intelligence characters in New Orleans at the time, who were running all these anti-Castro Cuban operations, as well as, Cold War operations, and some interesting connections with, the deep space aerospace connection, which is, again, the UFO file, which is what a most knowledgeable JFK researchers at the very end of their research, when they ask, like, why did they kill him? And the Bay of Pigs invasion, the Cuban thing, was definitely a huge motivation for a number of these people. When you look at who the assassination teams were, the Alpha 66 and the assassination squads. Mark Grobert believes they were Cubans who were brought in as part of the assassination squad and then flown immediately back to Cuba or out of the country afterwards. Would make sense. There was some, we did point out a number of interesting people in Dealey Plaza. This Cuban complected man right sitting next to the Umbrella Man, who looks a lot like, Frank Sturgis, here being paraded and walked out in front of the Texas School Book Depository building because they were found out in the train yard behind. Thank you, Nick. That's awesome for the $10 chat, and I appreciate that very much, sir. Thank you. And please, you can ask a question or bring up something too. If be happy to to get into topics that people want to dig into and talk about. The guy who planned the Bay of Pigs and was the two people fired for the Bay of Pigs were Alan Dulles, who gets to head the Warren Commission, which is the investigation into Kennedy's death, which is just it's a shame that these people were not arrested and charged with the crime. It's quite obvious to any researcher looking back in history now that these people were involved in a conspiracy to murder President John F. Kennedy. He had fired Charles Cabell, the U.S. Air Force and CIA director who organized the Bay of Pigs invasion plan, whose brother was the mayor of Dallas. And these guys, along with Johnson, approved the motorcade route, which was changed to bring them through the Dealey Plaza to go to the Trade Mart. So they could take that weird turns onto Houston and Elm Street where they had to slow down to take the turn, and that would give them an ample opportunity. But again, you look at the crime scene layout of Dealey Plaza, right? So let's go to the maps, right? There's a whole JFK assassination map here. This is great. Oh, yeah. Dealey Plaza, number 1. What is this? Warren Diamonds Mausoleum, Grove Hill Cemetery. That must be where they're buried. But again, yeah. So the mafia connection. We have to get into the mafia connection because the mafia connection is important. I talked about this in my other expose on JFK. The mafia is key to this because let me find this again. Jim Braden is a key figure in both the JFK assassination and the RFK assassination, and this guy is definitely connected with some mobster, some sort of mobster activities. And that a lot of this classified stuff that's come out is this plan to kill Castro by using mafia assets, and that's all run by a guy named Bill Harvey. I covered all this stuff. Where is it in my presentation? Hold up, I'll find it. Hold on, it's in here. It might be after that. The mafia connection's interesting. I want to talk about that and name the names because Sam Giancana, of course. Let's play that clip. I want to play RFK, Sam Giancana, Little Girl. All right, we're gonna play this clip for you, just so you can understand the mafia element and why the mafia.
Tracked down in Las Vegas, Giancana was subpoenaed and torn into by Bobby Kennedy, who would eventually become his mortal enemy.
Would you tell us whether if you have opposition from anybody that you dispose of them by having them stuffed in the trunk? Is that what you do, Mr. Giancana?
Decline to answer because the annex believe my answer might tend to
Will
incriminate.
you tell us anything about any of your operations, or you just giggle every time I ask you a question?
Decline to answer because the annex believe my answer might tend to incriminate me.
I thought only little girls giggled, Mr. Giancana.
Giancana seemed oddly unruffled. Tracked down in Las Vegas.
So yeah, they arrested RFK, Bobby Kennedy, John F. Kennedy's little brother, arrested Sam Giancana down in Las Vegas, brought him to DC and put him on the stand. And basically Giancana said, every question that Bobby asked him was like, I refused, I declined to answer on the grounds that I may incriminate myself to every single question he asked him. And then RFK calls him a little girl. These people stuff people in trunks. They literally did. This guy took over the Chicago mob from Al Capone. He was Al Capone's like underman and took over the Chicago mob from Al Capone. So Sam Giancana in the 1960s was no joke. And he hated the Kennedys. He hated both of them. They were shutting all their info. They were basically going after the mob. And so the mob and the CIA, in an act of self-preservation, had means, motive, and opportunity to kill the president. Johnny Rosselli and a number of these guys, Peter Mayhew too as well. Peter Mayhew was essentially Bill Harvey's guy between. So Bill Harvey had this go-between. Bill Harvey was the CIA case officer for the whole Sam Giancana operation. So they were trying to get it's QK Enchant, I think that was Project QK Enchant was another wiretapping project, and that's related to Robert Mayhew. And again, that's connected to David Christ, because David Christ was the whole person in charge of the QK Enchant and QR Chest and those operations where they were trying to bug and listen to everyone. They had everyone under surveillance and stuff. So the mob also wanted to get back into Cuba. They were, moved to Las Vegas and were operating in Las Vegas and setting up a lot of the casinos there because they were displaced from Cuba. And so a lot of these guys, wanted to, take out Kennedy. They also wanted to take out, and then Eugene Hale Brady, right? Again, this very interesting character meets with in the office, same office as at Harrelson Hunt's Texas oil millionaire office, and Jack Ruby apparently met the same time at the same office. Jack Ruby was there. So Jack Ruby's over there meeting with these mob characters at the Hunt and the these oil business offices the day of the assassination, the day after the assassination. They goes to the hotel where these guys are staying. So these guys are clearly connected. Ruby's clearly connected to this whole mob element that moves in to Dallas the day of the assassination and is doing some kind of operation in Dallas the day of the assassination. And apparently the Chicago mob is all connected to this because the Chicago mob there was another plot that was uncovered in Chicago to kill President Kennedy. He was going to go to Love Field and Abraham Bolden was the first black Secret Service agent, blew the whistle on this. They framed him for some other crime and arrested him and sent him to jail for a number of years. He eventually won it on appeal and got out and got his name and everything back. And he said, these guys fired me and set me up because I exposed this Chicago plot within the Secret Service that they were, working to basically take out Kennedy. And the Secret Service agents, involved in the Kennedy assassination, all it took was a couple guys in the head of the Secret Service to organize this, because they took them all out at Jack Ruby's nightclub the night before the assassination and got them all super drunk. And so they were all like hung over and, a little bit disoriented the day of the assassination. This guy, Thomas Arthur Valet, was the patsy that they had set up to be the fall guy for the Chicago plot, if that had gone through. But Lee Harvey Oswald won the day, and when they finally had to take him out in Dallas. That was their last opportunity, and it was a messy, sloppy operation. They fucked up a lot of shit with the rifles. They had to switch the rifles out, and all kinds of evidence that they had to they messed up. They shot too many times, so they had to create this magic bullet theory to come up with the whole explanation for all the extra bullet holes and the wounds. So they really messed up this one. They botched it, but they somehow were able to pull it off and cover it up for 61 years. But Yeah, let me see. I also have to ask you what you think about Dorothy Kilgallen's death and link to the JFK assassination. Yeah, well, Dorothy Kilgallen's last interview that she ever did was with Jack Ruby. So, yeah, that will tell you something. So, yeah, they have to take out Oswald. They can't allow him to have a trial. They can't allow, evidence to have to be presented and witnesses to have to testify, because this just would have complicated things so much for the deep state, who already knew that they fucked up and made a bunch of mistakes with the shooters and the holes. They had FBI agents already on the scene trying to hide bullets and cover up evidence, and of course the planted 399 exhibit, the magic bullet that was planted on the stretcher 2 hours before, Dr. Shaw gives that, conference and says that the bullet's still in Connolly's leg. At this time of this conference, the bullet's still in his leg. And Jack Ruby is this, has a file going back he worked for Richard Nixon's office in the 1940s, going back to like 1947. So all the files on Jack Ruby, being a spy or, some kind of intelligence or, government connections, FBI informant, potentially, there's all that stuff going back. And, yeah, Jack Ruby hanging out with his buddy George Senator here. George Senator lives with him. They're both assumed to be gay. They got spy cameras and they're taking pictures of this parade and other things. So, George Senator, very interesting guy, lives with Jack Ruby at this apartment. Again, oh wait, you can't even see the stuff I'm looking at. I'm going to share this with you guys so you can see the whole Jack Ruby's apartment. Let's find Jack Ruby's apartment. I want to show you guys the whole scene. This Jack Ruby's sister's apartment there. Jeez. All right. Well, where are we? Well, here's Dealey Plaza. Okay, this is the outskirts of the Houston downtown. I mean, the Dallas downtown. They're going to the Trade Mart, which they have to get on the Stemmons Freeway right here. So they come down Main Street from the motorcade route, and the motorcade route takes this very weird sharp right turn, and then this extremely sharp left turn. It's beyond a 90-degree angle. Very, very sharp left turn there. This is the Texas School Book Depository building. This is the 6th floor. Doesn't shoot president coming down Houston Street. So when the president's traveling right at him would be the best time to shoot him, especially if you get that clear shot. So he does not shoot the president until the president takes this turn onto Elm Street. That is the kill zone. That is why they have another sniper right here ready to take the shot. They have a police car right here. They have a Dallas police officer named Roscoe White on the grassy knoll with his Dallas police car right there. He's got a sniper rifle and then a shotgun in the trunk, right? Shoots the president from right here between the white picket fence. They have other guys keeping everyone out of this area, making sure there's no one around. Can't get a clear view from Lee Bowers, could not get a clear view from the railroad tower. The railroad workers on the bridge said they saw a puff of smoke and a flash of light from between these two trees in this direction, but it took them a couple minutes because there were so many cars piled in here. It took them like 2 minutes to get around the fence and to this area, and by that time they only found footprints and cigarette butts in the mud next to where the white picket fence was. So that assassination team likely consisted of, some people think it was a Cuban gunman or a French gunman on the grassy knoll, as Howard Hunt claims. There was a French gunman named Lucien Sarti, again connected to Bill Harvey and that whole crowd. But many other researchers, according to biography in the papers found by Roscoe White's son, his father admitted that he was recruited by CIA. He served in Atsugi Air Force Base in the Marines with Lee Harvey Oswald. And then Roscoe White comes back and is hired on in October or November of 1963, just before the assassination, and would have been the ideal person, right here, shoot the president with the rifle, go put it in your cruiser in your car, and then drive. I would have the cruiser parked right here. That way you can drive it right out here, and then right into the front of the school book depository building where all the police cars are later parked that day. You can see they're all parked. The first one gets parked right here. The earliest pictures I find is the first car that was on the scene gets pulled over right here, and you could have just driven right out of here after putting that gun in your trunk, and then pulled up right here, and then been right outside that school book depository building. And I think that's how I would have done the assassination, and then again, right outside the assassination, you have a guy that looks like Roscoe White, oddly wearing a shower cap on top of his hat. So that's what weird thing is. There were a number of people in Dealey Plaza. They either had shower caps or X's on their hats, and that was like a sign that you were part of the operation. Really weird things were going. The people that were in position in Dallas that day in Dealey Plaza, and how many cops they had on it, because there was a number of people that were servicemen and other stuff that were hired to just come in and be like extra duty cops for big events and stuff. So there's all this kind of weird stuff going on with the assassination. But yeah, the Dorothy Kilgallen thing, there's a whole book by Nick Redfern on Dorothy Kilgallen, and that's how I first heard about her and her connection to the assassination. But Nick Redfern's book, this is Mark Shaw's Collateral Damage. Yeah, she was definitely collateral damage. She wanted the story, man. It's the story of the century, and she got too close to the truth, and they had to kill her. Her last interview was with Jack Ruby, and then Jack Ruby gets visited shortly after. He gets a court-appointed psychiatrist named Jolly West, right? Jolly West was the guy who treated Charles Manson at the Ashbury Clinic in Los Angeles, and Haight-Ashbury Clinic that they had set up in the district of the counterculture, the center of the counterculture, where bands like Grateful Dead got their start, and in the 60s and whatnot. So yeah, these Jolly West, the MK Ultra psychiatrist and hypnotist, gets appointed as Jack Ruby's court-appointed psychiatrist, gives him a shot of something in a needle, and then a couple weeks later, Ruby immediately goes insane after the shot. And the last meeting he has with Jolly West, he goes insane and then dies of cancer just shortly a couple months later. And what's really weird is, you find out that David Ferry, who again claims that he never knew Oswald, he didn't know Oswald at all, no connections to Oswald. And then this picture surfaces, which shows Lee Harvey Oswald, a young 18, 19-year-old Lee Harvey Oswald, in the Civil Air Patrol with all the other Civil Air Patrol cadets. And there's David Ferry. David Ferry's running the Civil Air Patrol and training all these young cadets. And he's a CIA pilot. He's got this alopecia. He used to work for an airlines. I forget what the name of the airlines was. Just listening to this today, I don't know why. I just don't have the memory that I once did. But he gets fired from the airline for some promiscuous gay activities while at work. And so he becomes this Civil Air Patrol instructor. And really interesting guy. Has a lot of connections to New Orleans, is apparently going to New Orleans too, and doing operations in New Orleans with Clay Shaw and David and Lee Harvey Oswald in the months before the assassination. And gets called to testify at Garrison's trial and winds up shot. 2 shots in the back of the head. That, they murdered David Ferry before he could, really, they could really dig into the truth of everything that he knew and did. So, and this is him from the movie. Very good depiction of him. Freaking weirdo, with weird hair and paint on eyebrows, and used to wear like a wig or something, man. But very strange character, and in David Ferry. But again, Dorothy Kilgallen is good friends with Marilyn Monroe, and they both wind up dead. Apparently, Dorothy Kilgallen said something to somebody about what she had learned from Marilyn, and that's why she wanted to go and talk to Jack Ruby and interview Jack Ruby. She interviews Jack Ruby, then she ends up dead. And apparently she told someone something or mentioned something about what she'd heard from Marilyn, and Marilyn that wound up dead. And there's a lot of suspicion that it had to do with Roswell and the UFO file. And then the whole Roswell and the UFO file comes interesting, that the mob connection to that, because Robert Mayhew, of course, as we know, Robert Mayhew is the mob connection guy, who's the connection between Sam Giancana and Bill Harvey at the CIA, and is the guy running all these other CIA operations. And he is the protege from Howard Hughes. He took over Howard Hughes's whole business and airplane, stuff. So there's the whole top secret aerospace connection with the mafia. Deeply connected to this, you have Michael Payne and Ruth Payne taking the Oswalds in. Ruth Payne visits Nashon Island a month before the assassination, where she is vacationing on Nashon Island, which is again owned by the Forbes family. And Nashon Island is where CIA Director Allen Dulles goes on vacation that same summer too. Right after a meeting in New York for an operation called W.U. Briney. And that's the code cryptoname for the operation. Look up cryptonym W.U. Briney, and you'll find out that there was this whole Haitian operation connected to Sissel, and George de Mohrenschildt goes there to meet Frank Stone and these top-level CIA guys in New York City, apparently on this whole thing about this Haitian Sissel thing, which again is very interesting. That no idea why he's connected to this W.U. Saline and W.U. Briney operations, but again, it connects George Bush and Thomas Devine to CIA operations, and this is one of them may have been Zapata Offshore Drilling Company, a proprietary investment consulting firm. W.U. Saline may have invested in a number of companies. One of them may have been Zapata Offshore Drilling Company. So that's basically the money that comes for Bush's first company comes from CIA. It's a CIA front company. The whole Operation Zapata, the oil platforms owned by Zapata Oil Offshore Drilling Company, which George Bush was the CIA CEO of from 1956 to 1964. He's the CEO of this company, and this company is basically in charge of the whole Bay of Pigs invasion for the CIA. It's a front company that's set up. The money's given to him by CIA, and it all comes from from these acronyms in these files, which people can look up and check into. This is all legit CIA stuff. And then Thomas Devine, this guy comes out of the Second World War, joins the CIA. He leaves the CIA in 1953 to help his associate George W. Bush to establish Zapata Oil. So again, he leaves the CIA. So the CIA guy leaves the CIA to start Bush's oil company with Bush. It's a CIA front company. So this is their operation, and they're getting ready for the Bay of Pigs stuff, for the Cuban stuff. They need a top secret place where they can operate out of, which is just off the radar. And these oil platform is just the best idea. So the CIA funds a bunch of the money into George Bush's oil company and creates Zapata Oil. And yeah, so lots of interesting stuff there with these cryptonyms. And then the other one, LP Dictum, is another interesting one. This all was uncovered by Russ Baker, by the way. Russ Baker is a world award-winning journalist who does incredible work. He wrote The Family of Secrets, a whole classified history of the Bush family. And yeah, the Bush connection to the JFK assassination is readily apparent and out there. And then also now the Bush connection to 9/11 should be looked at and heavily scrutinized, as are the connections between the 9/11 cover-up and the House Select Committee on Assassinations CIA involvement and cover-up, with that the revelation of what's in these new documents and what's coming out. And I really hope more and more comes out. And I really hope that, John Greenwald of the Black Vault, issues me an apology once, for blocking me and, blacklisting me for trying to, get him to come around to the 9/11 stuff. He just doesn't want to hear it, doesn't want to share it, doesn't want to look at it, won't argue it, blocks people who talk about it. And it just really shows John Greenwald's true colors of a guy that owns and runs a website which is supposed to be for leaking documents on classified government secrets. You're a hypocrite and a loser, John. And I really, really hope you come to your senses or are exposed for what you are, if you are indeed a part of this psychological operation and a cover-up, because that's a lot of what I get from John Greenwald. And especially blocking me and denying the whole 9/11, all the 9/11 stuff is key, man. It's a key part of it. And for you to have tunnel vision on the 9/11 stuff and be like, oh, this is 9/11 truth or conspiracy nonsense, but I believe in UFOs and JFK and other cover-ups, which I share tons of stuff on. Get the fuck out of here, dude. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's just, you need to come to your senses. George Bush connection to the JFK assassination is key. The Ruth Paine connection is also very key. Definitely check out this documentary, The Assassination in Mrs. Paine. You can watch it on Amazon Prime Video. It's a great documentary. They interview a ton of people. One of the things they outed in the film, they interviewed Priscilla McMillan, and Priscilla McMillan is super interesting character. This is her when she was younger, and this is her more recently in the interview that she did in the film. So she's interviewed in the film with Max Good, JFK Paine documentary it's called, and they interview her and they ask her directly. So she wrote this book called Marina and Lee, and she basically befriends Marina Oswald after the assassination. Denies being CIA, denies her having any connections to the CIA. Of course, the documents declassified now. It's all come out. She was CIA, absolutely CIA, and we knew it a lot of researchers and people that really knew her and dug into her knew her the whole time. Because this novel is basically like a CIA psychological warfare program when you read this, it's like, oh, this is Marina and Lee. So she makes friends with Marina, and then writes her, helps her write her story as her confidant and as this journalist and confidant in the whole story. So really interesting that she was CIA the whole time, that she befriends Marina Oswald after the assassination and writes this book, helps her basically like write this book on a, like all this stuff, but translates everything wrong, gives her own interpretations of what Marina says, and then also like uses the entire chance to paint this psychological picture of Lee Harvey Oswald, which was directly in line with what the counterintelligence psychological warfare operations specialists like George Joannides were the ones in charge of writing and creating in the aftermath of the JFK assassination for the Oswald file. And I believe that we're going to find a lot of documents related to that, hopefully that are still exist and can come out about George Etheron Joannides, who is a career CIA agent who did all kinds of horrible things over his career, I'm sure, and was awarded the CIA Medal of Lifetime Achievement Medal for it, which is again only given to people that do very important things and distinguished things in their career. But this guy's stuff's all classified. So what the hell could he have done to get such a prestigious medal if all this stuff's classified and we can't know? Well, it looks like he helped, plant people like Priscilla McMillan in the mix of all this, because, just in a massive, amazing coincidence, Priscilla McMillan is also shows up in Moscow when Lee Harvey Oswald's in Moscow and first defects to the Soviet Union. This, this random journalist just shows up in the Soviet Union and is interested and wants to interview Lee Harvey Oswald and know more about, his story. That's just and people are expected to believe it's just a coincidence. No, this woman was CIA, and it's come out in the documents that she was CIA and that she was working for the CIA to write like media narratives that people would read and think they were getting this inside scoop on Marina Oswald and the Lee Harvey Oswald story. And all this literature was being published to create a false, a fake narrative for the public around the Lee Harvey Oswald story, which, again, Ruth Payne and Michael Payne were the ones that met CIA Director Allen Dulles. Well, she met Allen Dulles out on Nishan Island, goes and visits her sister in Virginia, who didn't work for the CIA at all, right? Her dad set up a company called USAID, and she drives to New Orleans and picks up the Oswalds and brings them to Dallas and gives them a place to live, and then gets Lee Harvey Oswald a job at the Texas School Book Depository building, all within like a month of the assassination. October, like right before the assassination. She's like the one single-handedly responsible for setting all this up. And her husband, Michael Payne, has a top secret security clearance for Bell Helicopter, where he's an engineer. And allegedly, he's tied to this David Ferry and a number of these other characters as well. They all knew each other. But there's no conspiracy to assassinate JFK. And these conspiracy theorists are all nuts, and don't listen to them and don't dig into this and don't talk to them. And that's the narrative, like that the CIA and the mass media through the CIA assets have literally pumped out there to people. And there's a reason they don't want you to look into this and learn about it and dig into it, because it's deep, man. It's deep, and all their core secrets, all the deep state's deepest, darkest shit is in here, man. And it all connects to all the other stuff they've done on the 61-year crime spree since they murdered our president and got away with it in this country. And we've been living under a military dictatorship in this country ever since. This country is no longer the land of the free, no longer the home of the brave, because, all the brave people turn out like cowards, like Geraldo there on News Nation, just backpedaling on all of the revelations of the last 60 years that we've learned that there's no fucking possible way that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone to shoot the president, and you're going to fucking sit there and say that you backpedal and now support that narrative. Like, that's bull. That was just the biggest bullshit of all, man. I hope, I hope it was worth it for your career, Mr. Geraldo, and Mr. Bill O'Reilly too. He's another one. Bill O'Reilly. He is the worst. And again, Ross did some great work interviewing those more intelligence officers who know what they're talking about. Lou Elizondo is a freaking poser and a clown who has no idea what he's talking about. He used a picture of the TR-3B in his damn presentation here in Boston a couple months ago and refused to call it that. He told me when I confronted him on it that we can't call it a TR-3B. So yeah, some of these guys are better than Geraldo, man. Shame on you. Shame on you, you sellout prick. This is our time to shine and really fucking take them down. And you're going to fucking do this to us for real? Oh, man. It's just, it's a shame, man. Yeah, man, we got some good numbers tonight, man. Hopefully people learn some stuff. So we got any more questions out there? Did I miss any super chats? We got a new member today. Asked some great questions. Made some great points in connecting. I wish I could just have hours to talk about all this stuff because it's super deep and it goes super deep. But yeah, thank you, man. He sent me $20 over tonight plus a membership, man. So Mua, thank you. You're the star of the show tonight. Thank you so much for that. And yeah. Oh, did you guys not see my I confronted Lou Elizondo at the other week there, and when he came to Boston on March 10th here. So there's a video of that up somewhere. I think it's on my channel. But yeah, man, Lou just really showed himself at that presentation because Lou's presentation was like, it was the pale blue dot and Cosmos with a little bit of brief history of time mixed in for the first like half hour. It was like a 7th grade science lesson of old, like 1970s, pale blue dot stuff. And it was really bad. And then I think I have that one here. So Elizondo, Boston. Yeah. So I tried to recreate some of his slides from the just to give people an idea. And he had some UFO thing that he brought up, and it looked kind of like this. And then he said it was something else, and it was just really weird. It was really weird and really didn't like lead me to think he's super informed. And he has all that stuff in his book about the warp drive and stuff, man. I really wish he could explain that better and go over that stuff. And he had this whole stupid idea of the warp bubbles. You create these warp bubbles around the ship, and that's how these things fly, even though a number of these rod things have been proven to be bugs on cameras. And that the TR-3B and the TR, he had this really stupid idea about warp bubbles being all about this. He had a good slide on drones and the New Jersey stuff, and I really wish I took pictures of that or could get him to. That was probably the best part of his presentation, was when he like debunked the official narrative on the New Jersey stuff. And that was decent, but again, he didn't come off like someone who's a superb, knowledgeable expert and someone we should rely on for information in the field. It's really really, there's so much better researchers out there, man. And I don't know why these guys got so much attention, and people like they hung the whole UFO disclosure stuff on TTSA and a couple of these Pentagon spooks who used to torture people out at Guantanamo, man. That's what Lou's job was before he TTSA, man. He used to be a torturer at Guantanamo Bay, head of the torture program and stuff. So it's really wild stuff. But man, the fact that that Oswald didn't shoot President Kennedy until he got to the proximity of the grassy knoll is just indication that there's a kill zone in this area, and they had triangulated fire in order to make sure that they took President Kennedy out. Again, I'll post some more links to all this David Christ stuff. There's tons of cool documents on that, and that was really cool to learn about. And I'm going to wrap it up here because I'm getting tired and I want to go help out with home duties and stuff. But yeah, oh wait, I wanted to show Jack Ruby's apartment on the maps, dude. Okay. Before we go, I'm going to show one last thing, right? So down here, this is the Texas Theater where Oswald ends up after the assassination, right? There's Dealey Plaza over here. Go across into the Dallas suburbs, and the residential district and stuff out of the downtown business district. And this is where the Texas Theater is, where Oswald ends up. He apparently walks there from over this way. This field right here, where you see that the field and the baseball field, right here is the corner of East 10th Street and South Patton Street. And this is where Oswald allegedly shoots J.D. Tippit right here. There's a memorial right where he allegedly, J.D. Tippit's cruiser pulls up on him and he allegedly shoots the officer, J.D. Tippit. But what's really interesting is that, right here is where J.D. Tippit lives. I mean, right here is where J.D. Tippit was shot, right? And if you walk here and here, and across here, and over to here, and then right there, okay, it turns out that that's about half a mile. And right here, of course, is the former residence of Jack Ruby. So this is Jack Ruby's apartment right here. Would have looked out this back. And so from Jack Ruby's apartment, it's it's like half a mile. It's 2,334 feet walk. Okay. Now let's clear that measurement and let's do a walk from Oswald's walk. Okay. So Oswald apparently walks down here. Oops. Come on. They don't know the exact route, but they think like North Patton Street the whole way pretty much to Cliff Park. And here's Oswald's rooming house up here, of course, near the park. Oh, cancel that one out. Let's just go to 6th Street. Boom. There's Oswald's rooming house, and it's 4,000 feet away. So it's much longer distance between Oswald's and where J.D. Tippit was shot than where Jack Ruby's house, which is Jack Ruby's right there. Okay. So that gives you some perspective on the Dallas, the distances of everything. And then, so Oswald leaves his boarding house up here near Lake Cliff Park, shoots J.D. Tippit over here near the football field and baseball field behind them. Right. And then winds up over here at the Texas Theater. Now, a lot of researchers don't believe that Oswald killed J.D. Tippit. Like he ran from the school book depository building, stopped at his boarding house, apparently got on a bus, left the bus, and went back to grab his gun, and then winds up at the Texas Theater. Number of people think that Larry Crawford or someone connected to Jack Ruby might have been the real killer of J.D. Tippit. Some people think it was Roscoe White. But anyways, J.D. Tippit knows something about the assassination or has seen something or knows too much and needs to get taken out. And then they use actually the J.D. Tippit murder. That's why all the cops are out trying to look for Oswald. And that's why they storm the theater looking for Oswald in such force, because he just shot a cop. And that's what they originally arrested him on, was the murder of the police officer, but then they also charged him with the murder of the president. But yeah, so that's the whole like JFK assassination case in sort of a nutshell, for you, with some of the locations marked off, so you guys can go dig through and do your own research. It's a good rabbit hole to dive down, man. It's all these documents and all this stuff coming out. I think it's important. Again, all the fact that Oswald had a 201 file, okay, that Anslinger lied about it on the under oath, on the witness stand and to the Warren Commission, covered up the fact that they had a huge file on Oswald, and the 201 file they had was so voluminous. It was like 60 boxes or something full of stuff that they had on Oswald. All that stuff needs to come out, and when that comes out, we're gonna learn a lot about. They're going to try to make it look like something else, like I said, with the Grok thing and the Victor Petrov connection and the Salvatore Russo and Good Pasture, and these three names that are going to come up in a lot of these documents and a lot of this stuff. But I assure you, this is all part of the CIA's framing of Lee Harvey Oswald as a KGB Wetworks connected assassin, because they were originally going to blame this whole thing on and start a war with Cuba and a war with Russia over all this stuff. And man, someone's got to be able to figure out who this guy was, man. Who the heck was the Lee Harvey Oswald in Mexico City? I can't believe that this was unsolved, that Hoover had a picture of this guy, and that Hoover knew and sent like memos to the CIA, basically knowing, he talked in the LBJ conversations, he knew that wasn't Oswald. But it almost does look like Ted O'Neill, man. It does kind of look like Ted O'Neill. But yeah, huh? Yes, dude, definitely another psyop, man. You got to be careful of these when you get into spooky subjects and spooky stuff, man. There's a lot of spookiness going around. So Oswald snuck into the theater without paying, and that's why the cops, got called on him, apparently. But yeah, that's interesting. Here it is. Yeah, the whole arrest and everything is also, it's all curious. Oh yeah, that scene, dude. How they filmed the JFK scene in Forrest Gump. Have you ever seen that? He had to basically that was interesting. Yeah, that's a good one. They green screen, they screened him in and over stuff, a lot of stuff, so it's funny how they were able to do that in Forrest Gump and make him look like he was in these historical. Yeah, they shot him in the head while he was riding in his car, and it was the damn CIA, and it was that director Alan Dulles that he had fired. LBJ wanted, obviously, to take the position. Anytime a political leader is assassinated in history, it's almost always the second in command that does it. I mean, just look at Julius Caesar, et tu, Brute. It's the same kind of thing. But yeah, I just don't know why. Got to do this, man. Renee, thanks for coming back. It's awesome to see you here. I appreciate that. Smash that thumbs up. Help us get some more exposure for this, and you know that they're not going to share this, and Yeah, and then my favorite thing was the Watergate conspiracy that, he's like, oh, these guys are shining lights and I can't sleep. So the whole Watergate arresting officer, not Frank Willis. Was it Frank Willis? Was he the security guard? There was a arresting officer there. I don't think it was Frank Willis who was Deep Throat. It was where's the arresting other officer? It was one of the arresting officers in the case. Apparently was Deep Throat, it turns out. Let me find it. Said Mark Throat. It still says on the Wikipedia page that Mark Felt was Deep Throat. That's not true. Yeah, don't believe everything on you read on Wikipedia and see on Wikipedia. Yeah, no, the guy who really did this was the arresting officer in the case who was sharing all this information. It's the real one. So and it wasn't Frank Willis. I don't think. That's not the name that I remember. Carl Schaffler. That's the guy's name. Carl Schaffler. It was Deep Throat. That's the real Deep Throat. Anyways, good luck, everyone out there, and thanks for another awesome show. And who's Eugene Duncan? I want to look into those names. Yeah, any other names you guys think I should look into or dig into? Yeah, please send it. Man, you'd have to go through like every old yearbook from like the 1950s to find who that guy was, man. Like could have even graduated in the 40s. He could have been like 30 or in 40 in 63 when that picture was taken. So yeah, a lot of controversy in the witnesses that saw the Tippit murder. Man, it's an interesting case inside of a case. But yeah, and the whole fact that Hunt didn't get arrested. Hunt got away. That they fled, and only a couple of the guys got arrested, and then Hunt went to his son's house and was trying to get rid of all the spy equipment and was like trying to cover all this stuff up to really bury his involvement. Immediately calls up his attorney there, Howard Hunt, to get these guys bailed out. He calls up Gordon Liddy. Not Gordon Liddy. Gordon Liddy's the other guy involved. I just said this guy's name earlier, and now I forget it again. It's a hard name to remember. It's not an easy name. But yeah, Hunt told his lawyer later at the end of the trial that the reason we killed Kennedy was he was going to give our secrets, our UFO secrets, to the Russians about the alien technology. That's what the top spy said. That's what he said about it. So very interesting, considering all the top secret aerospace connections to the assassination. When you really dig into the assassination and the top secret aerospace connections to the mafia, to the CIA, and everyone involved. And the fact that Bush was hired as CIA director, just in time for the House Select Committee on Assassinations. Very interesting. Also, the CIA director at the time was a guy named John McCone, who came from, of course, the Atomic Energy Commission, involved with a number of top secret projects of our nuclear program at the time. So, anyways, we need to dig into all these CIA directors. They've all pretty much, all of them have been, except for a few of the good ones. We talked about who they were, like Stansfield Turner was very unexperienced, but Jimmy Carter had put him in charge because he didn't trust George Bush, which rightly so. He should have had George Bush arrested immediately, and that would have brought the whole thing down before George Bush could do more damage to this country than he already did. But yeah, Bush was CIA director in 1976, right, for the House Select Committee on Assassinations. Before Carter asked him about the UFO stuff, and he wouldn't tell him, so he fired him. Tried to get Stansfield Turner in there to get a hold of that stuff. So it's been a big struggle with presidents and everyone to try to get these secrets and this information out of the deep state, and that is where we are right now as a public. That's where we are with the UFO stuff, in the same position, trying to get the information out of the government. And so there's a lot to learn here from the JFK and 9/11 stuff, because it's all connected. As I mentioned before, the Carlyle Group bought out EG&G right before 9/11. So all that top secret technology, all that UFO X Protect file went into the hands of these people who have been, committing crimes against America for decades now, and gotten away with it, and no one gets held responsible because the people in charge of the cover-ups are all deeply, entwined and well funded on CIA payroll. So a big part of, really disrupting this, getting rid of USAID and all that, the fact that Ruth Payne's father helped set up USAID, big time CIA operation. That is a big funding mechanism for a lot of the disinformation and counterintelligence operations domestically. So, exposing those people and those individuals who are deeply, funded and tied to these, top secret cover-ups and intelligence operations is key to getting justice. Because if we really need to see arrests, the FBI, and they need to arrest these people, hold them accountable. Because you arrest these people and you press charges against them, and you make this all serious, you actually get them to face real penalties like real people face. They're all going to rat on each other. They're all going to roll over and snitch. And you're going to get, within a couple months, man, if you arrest the right people and you hold them actually accountable, you're going to get all the information. You're going to get a lot of what and a lot of what hasn't been covered up already with the people that they've murdered and stuff. So there's been so much, man. It's scary, scary sometimes. And they put a lot of people under surveillance and investigation who try to expose this stuff. The people that should be, they should be arresting the people we're talking about, but instead they arrest you for talking about it. Messed up stuff, man. This country, it's really fucked up how bad it is. It really is. And I want my son to grow up and go to Mars. His name is Mars, born just on Monday. And yeah, I really hope that he can grow up in a country that's free. I really hope that Bush and all these people get held accountable and get arrested, and that Trump is strong enough to really bring down the deep state. I really hope he follows through, and Elon follows through, like, really seriously and hard. They need to go fucking hard on this. And